And to help us break the Giants down, Charlotte Carroll, who covers the Giants beat for The Athletic, stops by. Charlotte, thank you for a few minutes. We appreciate it. Let's just begin with kind of big picture state of the union. Coach has been fired, D coordinator fired, GM Joe Schoen may be fighting for his job down the stretch, and they are home favorites at 2-11. We've talked all week about just how big a deal this is for Washington to try to avoid a 12-game losing streak to end the season. This is their best shot at a win. How big of a deal is this for the Giants and whoever's job is still on the line there?
Yeah, no, it's another big game. Thanks so much for having me on. It's our first off the bye, and it's a big one coming off that disaster of a loss to the Patriots, where it felt like everything that could go wrong did. Where it's summarized by that crazy kick. Just kind of summarizes the state of the season a little bit too from two. But yeah, no, it's another big game, an opportunity to come off strong off the bye. And the Giants really, the big storyline coming into the season was the strength of schedule that they had. Now the schedule lightens up, or maybe too little too late, but they really have an opportunity to close out the season strong and kind of at least end the year with a little bit of pride and not yet another losing season the way it has gone in the years past.
Yeah, that was just a regular 18-point loss. We do 31-point shutouts on our neck of the woods here, Charlotte. But let's go to this defense for New York first. I thought they'd be fine. I thought the calling card would be good defensive front. They might bother some people. They'll win some rock fights on occasion. My narrative coming into the season was totally wrong. This defense has really struggled. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, no, that's the question of the year, and it's been very frustrating to watch because if you're a Giants fan, you were told all about this wonderful defensive front, all these new pieces. It's kind of wild when you think about the storylines in the offseason of just, pretty much everyone on offense was returning besides the quarterback. Everyone was. It was 10 of the 11 starters beyond the quarterback, which had a major switch up, and yet the offense has been the one consistently, kind of showing up. Jaxson Darts looked impressive. And the defense here has not been able to get the job done. You've had some injuries at really critical times at juncture. I think it all started going wrong I think it was week 7, week 8. I'm losing track of weeks. But the loss to Denver, where both starting corner Paulson Adebo and starting safety Javon Holland went out, and from there it just kind of snowballed, and that's where the losing streak originates. And then their run defense is tragic too, and that's been really tough to swallow, and just all these other pieces.
Charlotte Carroll covers the Giants for The Athletic. Yeah, I've been making the case this week, if I'm Kingsbury, I'm just getting downhill with Rodriguez and Krosky Merritt. We're running the football early and often. Have they shown any signs of life there in recent weeks? Have they been able to improve stopping the run, or is that still an area where they can be gashed?
It's definitely still an area. I haven't looked so much at the details yet over week to week, but I think everyone's a little bit healthier. They've gotten some pieces back defensively. See if that helps. There's also been, the big storyline change in coordinator, and they fired Shane Bowen, so that switched over. Charlie Bullen took over the job, who had been outside linebackers coach. There's just a lot of transition and a lot of change over the course of the season too. And then they just recently fired their assistant defensive line coach as well.
Pass defense-wise, can they be had through the air? Or is it just easier just to hand it off?
I'd say track record, hand it off is on your side, but it also depends who's in there at corner. Is also questionable as well at times.
Abdul Carter's season from the outside looks like a disaster.
What a mess.
Multiple games where he hasn't started, benched for a series or a quarter, and all kinds of rumors about missing practices and meetings and whatever else. Get us up to speed on the type of year he's had when he's on the field and how salvageable his off-field stuff is.
Yeah, it's actually good timing for that question. We at The Athletic, we've done like an annual fan survey where, we just put out like a Google poll and try to get people's perceptions. And one of our questions, just with the seasons that it's been since we started this, is who's the player that's most frustrated you over the course of the season? And surprisingly, Abdul Carter was top there, pretty much neck and neck with, along with cornerback Deonte Banks. But if you had said that at the beginning of the season, especially when he was drafted, you'd be like, what? How did this happen? And I think it's the perception of this kid who came in so confident enough to ask for Lawrence Taylor's number. That gets denied. This kid has been confident since he arrived at Penn State, since he was a kid. but then the play so far hasn't backed it up. And when you couple that with, being late to meetings a few times and just that with the rules, you get a fan base that's very, very frustrated that this is the number 3 pick and it's not immediately translating. The Giants this week, fresh out of the bye, have been key to harp on, his attention to detail and meetings and process. So we'll be very curious to see what happens this week. He did, after he got benched before the bye, he did come out of that game with his first true sack. So we'll see if the messaging and it kind of continues and he can close out the year strong.
Who on that side of the ball, talking about the defense still, has played well, kind of has held up their end of the bargain?
Oh my God, Brian Burns. You can't talk about this defense for as bad as it's been. Brian Burns has been a stalwart, very consistent. He's, I think last time I checked, second in the league in stats, 13.0 in sacks. And he's just, for everything that's gone wrong, he's been the one to put in the effort. And he's just looked really, really strong this season.
Yeah, he's actually gone back-to-back games without a sack for the first time all season, which is bad news for Washington probably, that he's due. He started the year with sacks in each of his first 4, and I think in like 8 of his first 9 games. He's been very, very consistent. To your point, we're talking about the Giants and scouting the opponent right now on Grant and Danny as we get closer to kickoff, which looms on Sunday. Charlotte Carroll, the Athletic in New York, is joining us. Let's go over to the offensive side of the ball. What is the perception in town about Jaxson Dart as we close in on the end of his rookie year?
Yeah, no, he's been really promising. He's been really exciting to watch. He brings a confidence and a swagger, as we've talked about. The big thing with him is just learning kind of situational awareness and when to take the hit versus not. He's someone who's been checked for concussion 4 times since he started, and including the preseason. Obviously missed 2 games with a concussion, came back to this Monday Night Football game. That was his first game back from a concussion, and then takes a massive hit very early in the game. And that's a huge talking point. It's just, trying to get it through his head and trying to get through a young player. This is when you take that hit, maybe his fourth quarter versus, early in the game. So just like the learning curve with that. But he's been extremely impressive and understands his role on the team. You've heard of the respect from teammates, but also handling kind of the New York media and what to do there as well.
How devastating and kind of what was the reaction and how big of a deal was the story of this year, losing Malik Neighbors on that substandard turf up there that everybody complains about in New York? Just what did that do to the fan base, to the team, et cetera?
I mean, it's devastating. I mean, turf aside, turf discussion, whatever. It's just you lose a really fantastic player who's dynamic, who can really change a game with his abilities and make plays that no one really else on this roster can on a consistent basis. So, and it's also really a huge loss when you've got this rookie quarterback to be able to kind of develop him with a player of Neighbors' caliber and what they could accomplish together. It's crazy. I mean, that feels so long ago. Cam Scadaboo's injury feels so long ago. He's a rookie running back. Scadaboo is actually walking now of his own power. Shared a video earlier this week of how his rehab is going and just walking into the facility without crutches or a brace or anything. So the season is both so long and so short at the same time that just feels like a lifetime ago.
Obviously, the Malik Neighbors injury was a killer when that happened at the very beginning of the season. I look at this receiver room, and it's still just utterly unscary, I suppose. I mean, you got Wan'Dale Robinson doing a lot of the stuff around the line of scrimmage. They'll take a deep shot at some point to Darius Slayton, so they gave a pretty big contract to. Isaiah Hodgins has had some huge games against Washington, but not a whole lot of other production. For Jaxson Dart, getting him to a level where they want to with this supporting cast, I mean, how much of grading on a curve do they have to do right now?
Yeah, that's a good point of, like, when you lose Malik Neighbors, when you lose Scadaboo, who are his 2 kind of primary offensive weapons just to start out, he's had to adjust and take into consideration other players. They've turned to Theo Johnson. They really went heavy in tight end personnel. Daniel Bellinger as well, and Theo's been good in the red zone. An option down there he's got 5 touchdowns on the year, which is the most among kind of the receivers tight end room. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to kind of to reflect on that in the postseason a little bit and what they decide to do come draft, because at this point in the last season, 2-11. You're looking at draft order, and Giants are number one, at least for right now, and we'll see if they end the year with that 4 games later.
To that point, currently the number 1 pick, we were joking how big of a game this is in terms of draft status. This has happened before. I remember when Washington and New York played in the Chase Young sweepstakes, and everybody celebrated here that Washington was going to get Chase Young, and he ended up being a bust for Washington as it is. But what's the dialogue about the number 1 pick winning, being damaging versus needing a win in town this week in New York? How are they dealing with that?
I really don't think it's come up at all, at least in the conversations that I've had. I mean, the guys are never going to, when you're talking with players, they're never going to want to say they want to lose.
I mean with the fans. I mean in town.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's as dominant as it was last year because they're in a position this year where they have the quarterback in theory. Like, they've liked what they've seen from Jaxson Dart. That sample I mentioned earlier, I think it was 80 to 90% believe Jaxson Dart's the future. So I think that, I don't want to say lowers the stakes in a draft race because obviously you want it to get the best talent possible no matter the position. But it's less pressing when you're dealing with a draft class that might only have 1 or 2 top QB prospects, and you're really edging up to get the 1 or 2 spot in the draft, as we saw the Giants miss out on Drake May in 2024. So I think the quarterback, at least having that solved, at least for right now, kind of takes the pressure off of that. If anything, I think the New York fan base is more riled up about the status of GM Joe Shane and what's going to transpire there in the coaching search come the end of the year.
What does Jaxson Dart do well right now, and what does the staff and kind of your observations say he needs to improve upon?
Yeah, I think the big thing is the hits and just taking them and knowing when to kind of use that contact versus not taking it. I actually asked Jaxson this question because they've had a lot of time at the bye. He's spent it kind of self-scouting. And he was pretty happy with a few of his things that he's done, and the coaching staff was liking it as well. I think one of his things was just kind of awareness and just being his ball security were some of the things he was happy with.
Covering the Giants, Charlotte Carroll of The Athletic in New York. All right, last one for me. Coaching search. What makes sense for them moving forward?
Great question, $1 million one. I think they want someone experienced. They want someone kind of who's been there before. I don't know who that is at this point. There's a lot of options, but they've gone the first-time coaching route previously, so maybe they go back a little bit more experienced, maybe defensive-minded. I don't know. We're going to see, and the big piece, as I mentioned, is if GM Joe Shane will be around and who wants to pair with that. But I think it's an attractive job. I mean, it's New York, it's a historic franchise, and Dart's play has been well enough to at least kind of add to the appeal a little bit more as well.
You mentioned Joe Shane. Does he keep his gig beyond this year? What would have to happen?
I don't know. We're going to find out. His bye week presser came late this year with the Giants bye coming in week 14, so he annually talks, and obviously that was a big topic. The big thing he said is, he's going to still be evaluated by ownership come the end of the year. So I think this team needs to win. It's more just like, you can't have embarrassing headlines and things like we saw out of that Patriots game to close up the year. It just kind of needs to be smooth and quiet, I would say, at least as a starting point, just from the outside.
Well, thank you for the insight, helping us get ready for the ball game and learn about the Giants. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks,
You
Charlotte.
got it. Good information from Charlotte Carroll, who covers the Giants in New York for The Athletic.